My next guest is a marketing, events, and multimedia specialist. Please welcome to the show, Patrice Whiffen. Hi, Patrice.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to chat with someone. I know it's still through a computer screen and not in person, but nice to chat with someone I haven't seen in a while.
No, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. Obviously, you know how much I admire you and your work. So, Patrice, walk us through
Well,
your
thank you.
career journey to entering the sport industry in 2008 with PrimeTime, and then now working as a social media and content coordinator with Warner Music Canada.
Kind of cool to have seen the event grow and my role develop as I continued with Primetime. So I went from in 2008 being an intern to then um, in, I guess, 2011 taking over as the sport management conference event manager and then their director of marketing and events and media. So that was a really fun kind of transition, start to finish, but it was a lot of learning along the way. Some people think that internships aren't valuable. I totally think they are. It allows you to learn from everyone else who's doing the job that you eventually want to do one day. And um, it allows you to also find your strengths. So for me, I love marketing, I love events. I know that sponsorship is not my forte, although I do a little bit of it as well. But it definitely it allows you the opportunity to kind of see what is of interest, but also where your skills lie. So being able to kind of grow with Primetime has been a lot of fun. I'm still with them. We are going into our 13th annual, and knock on wood, that happens in November of 2020. That's what we're hoping. But obviously, we need to make sure it's safe to do so first. But yeah, that was kind of how things began with Primetime. And you also asked about Warner Music Canada. So I joined them in 2018. They're one of the clients that I work with. I have my own sports and entertainment marketing company. So I do marketing, events, and multimedia. So we do anything from social media to digital marketing to branding to the hosting side of events. So it's a little boutique shop, just Patrice Whiffen Marketing and Events. But I have a two-member team that also two women who work with me within that company, and then we work with lots of different clients. And some work directly with me. Some are able to utilize my team as well. Warner Music Canada, I work specifically with them. The rest of my team doesn't, but it's been a wild ride being able to take that on, and it's fun to be able to combine my passion and interest in the sports industry as well as my passion and interest in the music industry, and be able to kind of call that your career and your job. So that's kind of the Coles Notes version. If you have, a couple hours, I could probably go into a lot more detail, but that's sort of where it all began and where I am now. And yeah, looking forward to what's next.
Awesome. Patrice, in your role at Warner Music Canada, is the music industry similar or different to the sport industry?
Yeah, definitely a lot of similarities between the two. I mean, both industries are really dependent on fans. If people aren't there consuming the music or consuming the sports, if people don't care about the artists, if people don't care about the athletes, the teams, that kind of stuff, there really is no industry. So, one of the biggest similarities between the two is creating that sense of community. You want to connect with your fan base and find that genuine sort of community in an online space so that you can connect when you're not together, but then also create that sense of community in a arena, at a sold out show or at a football stadium for a game, that kind of thing. So definitely a lot of similarities in that regard. In terms of the work side of things, there's a lot of similarities that go into it. I mean, sponsorship, marketing, digital media, um, lots of different career paths kind of come from those two industries that are very similar. And the other thing that is definitely a parallel between the two is that a lot of the revenue streams come from creating that connection with the fans. As far as being a worker in that field, another similarity is there really is no 9 to 5 with concerts, shows, travel, events, live sporting events, all that sort of stuff. You're working sometimes around the clock. And I mean, in the current economic climate with everything going on with the world pandemic, I mean, now no one's working. So it's um, sort of an interesting situation to be in right now because we can't celebrate all together. But a lot of the music and sports creating those online connections so that once it is safe to get back together at the stadium or at an arena or at an intimate venue, we have the ability to kind of leverage the connection that was made while we're in quarantine. So definitely lots of similarities, definitely lots of differences as well. But there are some parallels for people working in the sports and in music industries.
Mhm. Awesome. Um, Patrice, we were talking before with you having multiple different hats. And so, with having multiple responsibilities in different employment positions, what does a typical day look like for you?
I love this question only because no day ever looks the same, which I love. Some people can't function that way. They need the structure. I definitely don't have that at all. Every day is different. It all depends on timelines, and the important part of kind of my role is to stay organized and keep track of what every client needs, what their deadlines are, and what the expectations are to ensure that nothing gets missed. So, um, some days, if it's an event day, for example, it's early to rise and on site, setting up an event, making sure that everything is running smoothly, all of the stakeholders involved are happy, opening to the public, letting fans in, whether it be a music event or a sports event. Days where I'm not running an event, those are a little bit different. It's a lot of emails, conference calls, connecting with people, mapping out project plans, um, making sure that sort of everything is running according to schedule. So if it's an event, making sure that the run of show is coming together and any of the outside service providers have been booked and making sure sales are meeting their targets and all that sort of stuff. If it's the marketing plan, it's making sure that the branding is staying on point. Um, if it's social media, it's coming up with that content calendar and generating new content and finding what's working, what's not working from the content generation side of things. So, again, every day is different, every client is different, their needs um, and what they require on my end changes drastically depending on who I'm dealing with. So, um, every day is an adventure. And I mean that. And it's a lot of fun. But it can also be a little bit crazy. And yeah, I love it though.
Cool. Um, Patrice, in 2016, you started as an in-arena host for the Hamilton Bulldogs, and I find this so fascinating because you transitioned into the manager of the game operations and community relations. So, what are your favorite parts of the role, and then not so favorite parts of both roles?
Okay. So yeah, I joined the Bulldogs in Hamilton kind of really randomly. It was supposed to be just a one-time thing. I was helping out a friend of mine, Michael Carlismo, who worked who worked for the Bulldogs as the manager of game operations. He had his host bail out at the last minute. Their home opener was only days away. He gave me a call. He's like, "Hey, I know you've got hosting experience, and just for some background, I have radio and TV experience from before, so I he knew about that and knew that I was interested in hosting and had hosting experience. So he called me kind of at the last minute, was like, "Hey, I need someone to fill in. Our home openers this weekend. Any chance you could do it? Just this one game. That's all we need." Until we find another host. And I was like, sure, of course, like I'd love to. And so I went in, and the first game was so much fun. The entire team vibe among all of the front office people. It was just such a great feeling. The game operations team was amazing, and so they asked if I was interested in staying on and being their in arena host for the rest of the season, and I said absolutely. So that was really cool. And then flash forward to, I guess, the end of that season, kind of in the off season, moving into sort of preparing for training camp and stuff. The person that I had mentioned before, Michael, got a new job. He is now with the Belleville Senators. So he got that new job, and in his resignation conversation with the Hamilton Bulldogs, he recommended that they talk to me about taking on his role, which was really flattering and really sweet. And when we had that conversation initially with my now boss, Peggy Chapman, the conversation was kind of like, okay, you've got this hosting experience and you know kind of how our game operations work. But in addition to that, with all my event management experience, um, and one of those being I've worked with the Toronto Maple Leafs since 2011 as well in their game operations department, just on game nights, nothing too crazy there, but had that experience as well. So when I was in this effectively my interview for this new role, they kind of brought these things up. And at the time, I had no idea that that conversation would lead to pretty much like a life changing role. But it did. They decided that they were going to take me on and hire me as their new game operations manager. So that was super exciting, super fun. I've been in that role now for 3 seasons, and it's been a blast. We had a Memorial Cup run in my first year, which was so cool, so amazing to um, go out to Saskatchewan and cheer on our boys. Unfortunately, it wasn't a Memorial Cup victory, but it was still an OHL championship, which was pretty insane for the organization. But yeah, one of the kind of, I guess, catches of taking on this new role was that I was still going to remain their in arena host, which I don't think anyone else in the league does. I can't imagine. I don't know for a fact, but it's definitely adds a whole new level of chaos to your game nights. But I love it because I script the games and then I just have to implement the hosting role that I was doing anyway. And then I have a great team on game nights who assist with the game operations. So I have my floor director, um, Stephanie Barrett, who has been with the team way longer than me, who knows our game operations very well. And I kind of script everything ahead of time and then hand things over to her on game nights to make sure that things run smoothly. We're in constant communication, so if things don't run smoothly, or if there's questions, I'm always accessible, but I'm still able to fulfill my role. And again, I do have a great team on game nights who know what they're doing. From a production standpoint, I've got a great production manager who's been there, I think, all 3 years in some role. His name's Lucas Mancini, and then I have a whole other kind of side of the team with my ice crew and game crew as well. So it's a team effort, and it all comes together really nicely. And it's very rewarding to kind of have that family feel among your team and know that you're all working toward a common goal on game nights. And yeah, sorry that was a very long-winded answer, but I hope it kind of covered what you're talking about.
Oh, it was great. It was a great answer. Um, so transitioning to PrimeTime Sports, Patrice,
Mhm.
director, how is the planning process to create a yearly conference?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a year-round thing. We never stop thinking about it. I think there's maybe like 4 days after the conference where we kind of turn off our phones and just sort of decompress for a bit because you're kind of riding that high of seeing the conference come together. But otherwise, we're constantly throwing ideas back and forth. Myself and the organizing team, Trevor Whiffen and Brian Burke, as well as some of our intern team as well, and our committee who is comprised primarily of past interns who are still interested in being involved, which is great. But yeah, lots of things go into it. I mean, it starts with kind of mapping out the topics that we want to see each year. We ask for attendee feedback. So, what do people want to see? What's kind of not as relevant anymore? Once we map that out, we kind of make a list of speakers that we want to have, a wish list, so to speak, and see based on their availability what we can kind of put together as far as the schedule goes. And then once you create the bones of the event, we deal with the different corporate partners. We deal with different marketing and media outlets to get the word out there, different promotional tools, in addition to making sure that we're getting out there to the general public so that sales are again meeting the targets that we want. So we've been fortunate enough that every year we do grow, which is nice. And it's uh, yeah, it's a year-long process every time to kind of bring it together start to finish, but, it's a lot of fun, it's definitely very challenging, you're constantly trying to switch things up and see, how we can kind of improve and better the event for our attendees, but, the challenge is also very rewarding when you see it come together, so, again, if you had hours, we could talk about what all goes into that, but, that's sort of the general view of things.
What just like it occurred to me, Patrice, every year that I look at primetime at their conference, the speakers are always great. Like there's always a great panels and such through promotion. Um, every year, does the target of speakers kind of change?
Like, as far as who we're inviting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some speakers who are relevant every year. I mean, Brian and Trevor both use this example, but Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the National Hockey League, we could have him every year. Everyone always wants to hear him speak. Some years, there may be a particular speaker that just doesn't fit with the topics that we have. And that said, I mean, we try to switch up our topics. We try and switch up our expertise, and we also don't want to invite the same people every year, year after year, because we want to keep things fresh, not only for our attendees but also for them. You know, some speakers love to attend from a crowd standpoint and don't want to necessarily be on stage every year. So we try and switch things up, keep things fresh, and find out who the leaders in the sports business are each year because it's constantly changing. And it's been cool to see how some of the speakers that we had, 8 years ago participate in a workshop, or some of them even attended the event as a student or a recent graduate or something, and then flash forward, they're now speaking because they're the expert in their field. So it's really cool to kind of see that evolution as well. And again, we're always trying to keep things fresh and exciting for our attendees so that they want to continue to come back year after year.
Mhm. Awesome. My last question for you, Patrice, is
Mhm.
what kinds of preparation should someone be doing while preparing a career in the sport industry?
That's a great question, and one that I get asked a lot from students. One of the things that I recommend, and I know that it's something that you get told all the time, but networking and gaining experience while you're in school. Yes, of course, your focus should be the schoolwork and learning the material and making sure that you get good grades and all that sort of stuff. But what I say to a lot of students is, you've got, if it's a college program, you've got 2 years. If it's a university program, you've got 3 to 4 or maybe 5 years. So on average, you've got somewhere between 2 years and 5 years before you enter the work world, and use those years wisely. Gain as much experience as you can while you're in school, because that is kind of like what I mentioned with my internship at Primetime. It allows you to see what you're good at, maybe what you're not so good at, maybe what you're interested in, maybe what you thought you were interested in, you actually hate when you get into it. Um, During school, that's the time to kind of not play around as in not take it seriously, but try things out, be creative, take that risk, take that chance, take something on that you wouldn't necessarily take a risk on beforehand, or maybe if you've got bills to pay, that kind of thing. Um, do it while you're in school, and again, not to say that you don't have bills to pay while you're in school, but while you're working toward that higher education, get some experience doing something that you think you might want to do down the road, because that's the time where you're going to make great connections. You're going to add some lines to your resume that will be appealing once you get out of school. I mean, in theory, you're competing against all your other classmates for jobs within the sports industry. So, what are you doing to kind of set yourself apart from the rest of the people in your class? What experience do you have? Um, what have you done to kind of push yourself outside the norm? So, for some people, it's attending our conference and meeting people there. That's a great opportunity to again learn from and network with leaders in the sports industry. But if not going to the conference, there's so many other local opportunities to get involved in. Look at your local parks and recreation departments. Like they can definitely use help. If there's a local sports team, see if you can volunteer or intern or help out in some way. There's tons of organizations that are looking for people who can help them in some way, shape, or form. So as a student, that's your in. That's a way to gain experience, but again, the stakes aren't as high because if it doesn't work out or if it's something that's just not for you, well, that's okay. It's not the end of the world because you're in school still and you have time to kind of figure it out. So definitely getting out there, gaining experience in some way, shape, or form, volunteering for stuff. I know some people say, well, like, I don't know how to get involved because I don't know anyone at that company. Well, I don't know anyone until I know them. And that's how it's going to be your entire work life too. Reach out to people, send them an email, reach out to them on LinkedIn. If it's appropriate, maybe stop by their office. Again, if you kind of got to feel it out with each person, but there's so many different opportunities out there if you just look for them. And sometimes you don't know that it's an opportunity until you put your name out there and you reach out and create that connection. Maybe there isn't something that they have available at that exact time, but maybe there's something in the works and they remember, oh, that guy got in touch with me or that girl got in touch with me. Maybe I'll see if she wants to get involved or he wants to get involved. So definitely getting involved in something that is of interest to you is a great starting point. Informational interviews are also great. Meeting people, I mean, through Zoom, that's a great opportunity to learn and make those connections. Um, the other opportunity is to, physically, once it's safe to do so, go and meet people for a coffee or in some cases take them to lunch or something like that to kind of pick their brain and make that connection. But I've found what's been most significant to me is that sort of reaching out, offering to help, outlining, this is what my skill set is. This is how I think I can help you. And I would really appreciate you considering me for an opportunity. And don't go after the money. Don't be fueled by that side of things because that will eventually come if you find the right fit. Go first for what interests you, what's the opportunity, and how can you get involved and gain that experience. Because yes, the schooling is super important, but the experiences that you have as well are usually that's the piece that will help you leverage that next into that next position. Um, so I would say network, gain experience, learn, get involved in different groups. I mean, there's so many online groups as well for young professionals in the sports industry. There's publications for, not necessarily people in the sports industry, although there are those too, but there's like the Young Women of Influence. There's um, uh, alumni associations for your school that you can reach out to. There's so many different tools that are so available to you in an online setting. And I feel like a lot of people just don't think to look into them. So use the time while you're in school to really extend your knowledge and do some digging. I mean, Google is such a great resource to find information, see what you can come across, and talk to people and see what happens. And don't have such a clear cut plan that you can't possibly deviate from because in the sports and entertainment industries, that's almost never going to happen. You're never going to have a full plan, full steam ahead, finish school into career done. There's always going to be some roadblocks. There's always going to be some forks in the road. There's always going to be some bends and curves, and maybe, you end up coming to a complete halt and have to turn around. Like there's tons of different things that could happen. So being flexible and allowing yourself to pivot accordingly under whatever circumstances come your way is so, so important. So, again, another long winded answer, but hopefully some of that was helpful.
PrimeTime's such a professional and an incredible way to network with individuals in the industry. So the last word is yours, but I just want to thank you for this because it means a lot.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Vince. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and looking forward to seeing you again in person once it is safe to do so. Stay safe there.
Absolutely, you too. Patrice Whiffen, everybody.